In this session, we want to talk about IAM and Org Policy and everything that's new. We'll cover access risk, we'll cover at-scale governance for resources, and of course, we'll talk a little bit about AI. My name is Abhishek Hemrajani. I'm a Senior Director of Product here at Google. I focus on cloud security and specifically on platform security. So over the next 40 or so minutes, what I want to do is I want to take you through the Google Cloud Security Platform, or platform security specifically. So we'll talk about what do we call the security platform and what kind of investments we are making across the platform. So we'll cover that in a little bit. We'll talk about resource management and how resource management is evolving to becoming app-centric. If you heard our announcements today, Google's going full steam on app-centric. So resource management is also going to support application management natively, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about cloud governance. When you create and mutate resources in the cloud, how do you ensure they have the right security posture? We'll then start talking about identity platform. We'll talk about access management. We'll talk a little bit about access risk, and then we'll recap. So that's how the session's going to flow. Let's start with the security platform. So the way we think about the security platform is it's a set of foundational capabilities that allow you to operate your cloud and get the agility and the end-to-end security and posture that you need. At the core of the security platform is resource management. Resource management helps you organize your resources in the cloud, keeps things organized by the organization hierarchy, the department, the team, the production or the development environment, so on and so forth. So that's your core resource management layer. On top of the resource management layer, we have very compelling products for governance. Products that ensure that the resources, when created or mutated, have the right configuration and security posture that you need. So we call that governance, and that includes investments like org policy, custom org policy, or custom constraints. It also includes new investments like the Google Cloud Security Baseline. Alongside resource management is your identity platform. Identity platform is how do you onboard humans and non-humans to your cloud environment. All of those capabilities are powered by the identity platform. Now, once you have resources and identity in play, access starts becoming relevant. Which human or non-human should be able to access which resource? Access management allows that to happen. But of course, it's 2025, and access management can no longer just be about allow. Access management needs to evolve. PAM and JIT have become more important than ever before. Entitlement management, or CIEM, KIM, is more important than ever before with the amount of over-permissive identities that are out there. But there are also investments in areas like PAB, or Principal Access Boundary, which allows you to layer governance or defense in depth across IAM. And then finally, once you have access management in place, that allows you to start really focusing from a risk point of view. So if you think about when you got into this conference center, you have your badges which allow you access through the conference center. But what activity you perform at every single breakout area, that also becomes part of your continuous journey. IAM is similar. Once a session is logged in, you still need to keep tracking that session from a risk point of view. Is it an atypical activity that you're starting to detect? And our products from access risk point of view allow you to do that. This includes products like VPC service controls. It includes identity-aware proxy, context-aware access, but also includes new investments in MFA, reauthentication, and ITDR built directly into IAM. So that's our security platform, and of course, we supercharge all of it with Gemini to make sure that you have AI at your disposal for material value where you actually need it. Now, the way I like to think about my session is that this slide on the screen is the most important slide that you should be paying attention to. The previous slide represented this entire stack almost in a 3D. This one tells you everything that we're doing. This is also like your cheat sheet to navigate the Google security platform for cloud. These are the areas that you should have tried out. These are the areas that you should already be using in private preview, public preview, GA, based on where the capability is. If you aren't, I would encourage you to talk to your implementation partner, your internal teams, your Google associations. Just make sure you're trying out these capabilities. So that's the Google Cloud Security Platform. All right, let's start working through each of these layers. Let's start with resource management. Now, of course, in the on-prem world, you have full control on your hardware. You have full control on your resources. In some ways, that gives you a sense of assurance and security. In the cloud, the way you organize resources is with Cloud Resource Manager, which allows you to group or hierarchically distribute resources based on how it works for your organization. Once you have that hierarchy in place, you also need additional ways to reason about resources, and resource tags allow you to do that. Now, the one thing I'll say about the tags implementation in GCP is that there is a strong semantic associated with governance with GCP tags, which means that you can control who gets to use what tag keys and what tag values, and then also include them in IAM policy. So you can allow or deny conditionally based on tags, something that you can't really do with other clouds. And then, of course, once you have assets in place, you need the ability to search them, monitor them, analyze them, and the cloud asset inventory allows you to surface those features and capabilities. So that's our core investments from a resource point of view. And this is what a typical resource hierarchy looks like. At the top of it is an org node. Under it, you have folders. Folders can have other folders optionally. You can have up to 6 layers of folders. And then everything below that is a project or a resource. You can apply tags at any container, and that trickles down into the hierarchy. And then you can also use the hierarchy to condition policies, set IAM policies or organizational policies. You manage your API and billing your quota at the project level. So that's the resource management and scale capability that the resource management provides. Now, I said that GCP is going full-on app-centric. We really want you to be able to focus on your applications, not just your infra. Because when you focus on your apps, you focus on your business goals. So if you're watching announcements today, we are making massive investments around App Hub and app-centric, surfacing scenarios like app-centric observability, app-centric monitoring, app-centric cloud assistance. So CRM also needs to natively support app-centric. So what you'll now be able to do is use folders directly in GCP and turn them on for application management. The way that looks is on the screen, if you go into the settings of any folder, you'll now see a new option called App Enablement. It's in preview starting today. You'll be able to mark that particular folder enabled for app enablement. A set of APIs relevant to the scenarios will automatically get enabled. Any underlying infra required from associating quota, project billing, anything of that sort gets automatically enabled for you. And from that point on, you manage applications directly at that folder level. Now, those applications can span multiple projects under that folder hierarchy, allowing you to reason about your applications in a very logical manner that makes sense to your business instead of the rigid hierarchy of the org, resource, or folder. All right, so that's your resource management and the evolution of app centricity in resource management. Very important is also cloud governance. When you have resources in the cloud, if those resources aren't created or updated the right way, they become massive threat vectors. And cloud governance and the set of products that we provide allow you to have that governance at scale natively in the cloud. The way we surface that is organization policies. So we have over 110 built-in org policies in GCP. They are now evolving into an offering called Managed Constraint. It provides more capabilities for you to reason about applying an organization policy through your environment, safely test it, and roll it out so that you can be sure that an org policy makes sense for your environment, or your environment needs to evolve to support the org policy. So the evolution of org policy is managed constraints. Similarly, you have custom constraints or custom org policies. When the canned org constraints or managed constraints don't work for you and you want to author your own constraints, you use the custom constraints capability that allows you to create and manage your own policies. Now, last year, we were newly GA with the custom constraints. We didn't really have much service coverage. We only had 4 services at the previous Next. I'm happy to announce that we now have 57 Google Cloud products that support custom constraints in general availability. An additional 5 are in preview. And over the rest of this year, you should see this number starting to breach 100, 125 Google Cloud products supporting custom constraints. So if you've been waiting to adopt custom org policy or custom constraints but were held back by service coverage, now would be a good time to get started and try out those scenarios at scale. And of course, just like org policies prevent disallowed configurations from ever making it into the cloud, custom constraints disallow constraints that don't make sense for your organization to ever make it into the cloud. If you really think about cloud monitoring or cloud risk monitoring that CNAPP products focus on, it all eventually comes down to a resource that's poorly provisioned. Maybe it's exposed to the internet, or it comes down to an identity that's overly permissive. So if you think about that hygiene on day 0, you can significantly reduce the risk that you're dealing with in the cloud, almost eliminating the need for excessive security monitoring to be the primary focus for your security teams. Now, the other thing that we at Google really focus about is that we can make recommendations to you that you shouldn't have certain settings in the cloud, but if you do, it's your problem. But we really believe at Google that security is a shared responsibility. We shouldn't just talk about it. We should actually enable systems that deliver it. So I'm happy to announce the general availability of the Google Cloud Security Baseline. If you've created a new org, a new GCP org, anytime in the second half of last year, you already have the Google Cloud Security Baseline enabled for you. These are 6 managed constraints that ensure that the most egregious issues do not show up in your cloud environment. Starting this year, existing customers are seeing recommendations in their console, recommending them to start adopting the Google Cloud Security Baseline. When you do that, you also have the ability to use a simulator that tries out the constraint in your environment and tells you if you'll be able to sustain it. We are seeing pretty solid adoption from our top customers starting to roll out the Google Cloud Security Baseline. It takes care of the most common attack vectors from a resource point of view. All right, I mentioned that we want to make sure that AI delivers material value. So I want to show you a quick demo of, now that you have custom constraints, of course, you can author them the traditional way, or you can use Gemini chat to author the constraints. So on the screen, I'm leveraging Gemini to help me create an org policy that restricts my VMs to the N2D series. What you'll notice is that it takes a few seconds, but very quickly, Gemini will author an entire policy for me. I'll be able to look at that policy. I can see that it gave it a nice name. It gave it a pretty decent description. It allows the policy to restrict the VM series. But then it also gives me more option. Of course, I'm not going to just take the policy and apply it. I'm going to test it. So I can start testing directly with Gemini chat and also generate test cases. So here what I'm doing is set up test resources for this custom policies enforcement, and it's generating both positive and negative test cases, and the gcloud commands to create those resources after the policy is in a simulation mode, and resources that don't meet the criteria will be disallowed. Resources that meet the criteria would obviously get allowed, and the simulation run will tell me exactly that. So again, you can author your custom constraints yourself, or you can use Gemini to quickly author them, test them, roll it out. That's one way we are making sure that we deliver agility to how you operate the cloud. So we spoke about resources. We spoke about governing resources. Let's talk about identities. Now, the thing this year is, if you've been watching identity, everybody's talking about NHIs, non-human identities. A few years ago, they were like workload accounts, service accounts. This year, it's NHI. Gartner is saying NHI. But the reality is, NHIs, or non-human identities, are more important and more pervasive than ever before. And it's to the order of 50x. A few years ago, people said, oh, maybe you have 10 non-human identities for every human identities. This year, that number has exponentially increased to 50 times. So in addition to worrying about how does a human establish their digital identity when they access their cloud resources, you now also need to worry about these non-human identities associated with automation, associated with the cloud environment, associated with microservices, doing the right thing in the cloud environment, and you having a pulse on the risk associated with them. So you'll see us invest pretty extensively on improving the security posture from a non-human identity point of view. But let's talk about humans first. How do you get started with Google Cloud for human identities? You can use Google Cloud Workspace Cloud Identity. Cloud Identity allows you to synchronize your existing IDP with Google's Cloud Identity. From that point on, those identities can access your cloud environment. You can also use Identity Federation. What Identity Federation allows you to do is use your existing IDPs, Entra ID, Okta, allows you to use them with Google Cloud products without having to synchronize the identity. So the user group information stays in the source IDP. There's only one source of truth. You're not having to certify or test any new additional infra from your cloud point of view, but you can very quickly get started with Google Cloud by using Identity Federation. Or what we are seeing customers do, use mixed mode. They have cloud identity, but maybe they want to try out scenarios like Power BI being able to access data sitting in BigQuery. that's a great use case for portions of their deployment using identity federation. Or maybe they just acquired a new company and they are not ready to merge the IDPs, but they want to give access to the new workforce to the existing cloud environment. Identity federation allows you to have that kind of capability. My strong recommendation, if you're starting with GCP fresh, just use identity federation. It's easy, it's quick to set up, it gets you going. But if you're already using cloud identity and if you have targeted use cases for additional IDPs, again, consider using Workforce Identity Federation. Now, again, the one piece of feedback that customers as yourself provided us is, identity federation is great, but unless you support the entire portfolio of Google Cloud products, I can't really use it. So I'm happy to announce that we now cover over 95% Google Cloud products generally. And the reason I say is 95 because new products get built all the time. And when they're going through various states of preview, they may not already have Workforce Identity Federation support, but any new GA product is required to have Workforce Identity Federation. So over 95% products already have it. Also, in terms of new features, federated identities can be part of at least, or now 400 group memberships. You also have support for IL5 and FedRAMP. And then coming soon, we are going to enable MFA and session length enforcement for both cloud identity and identity federation. Let's talk a little bit about how do you improve the security for non-human identities. Now, when it comes to non-human identities, there are two scenarios that you want to focus on. Your workloads, wherever they are, they need to be able to talk to Google Cloud APIs. And your workloads in the cloud need to be able to talk to each other. We are making investments in both of these cases. So while in the human identity case, we want to make it easy for you to get started with your existing IDP, for non-human identities, we have aspirations and every intent to become your IDP for non-human identities. And the way we make that happen is by investing in both of those scenarios. So now generally available is keyless access to Google Cloud APIs using X509 certificates, and also additional scenarios available for managed workload identity. Managed workload identities massively simplify identity management for workloads that are in GCP. So we now have support for GCE, GKE, both in preview, and very soon for Cloud Run as well. Now, these are easy to manage, and more importantly, they are standards-based. They are based on SPIFFE, which just makes the entire identity lifecycle and the attestation of the identity, because it's tied to the lifecycle of the resource itself, makes them very secure because the platforms are attesting it. OK, so that was identity. Let's talk about access management. This is my favorite topic. It's amazing to me that in 2025, IAM being as legacy as a domain as it is still a very important topic and maybe more important than ever before. The reality is it's important because of this data. A CSP, one of the 3 CSPs, estimated that 51,000 permissions granted to their 209 million identities in their customers' cloud environments used only 2% of the permissions, and over 50% were high risk. Now, this comes from Microsoft's multi-cloud security report, and it's data from them. But across their entire customer base of 209 million identities, 51,000 permissions, I don't even know how people reason about those many permissions, only 2% being used. What that means is you have a massive attack vector. Each one of us is representative in that data set. We are all sitting with identities that we don't use. We are all good citizens, so we'll never do something that's problematic. But that's how good citizens become insiders who cause breaches, or accounts that get taken over and inadvertently cause massive security issues. We need to solve the over-permission problem, and we need to solve it when accounts get created, not post facto. It needs to happen when accounts get created. In reality, traditional IAM is just not enough. So the reason you'll see us invest a lot in IAM is because we believe the cloud security posture is not solved unless you make targeted cloud-centric investments. You can't lift and shift on-prem products to make them work for the cloud. You have to build them from a cloud centricity point of view. So the way we are solving it is by investing in 2 clear areas. We want to build defense in depth. Mistakes will happen in IAM. But how do we build controls that iteratively layer on top of each other so that IAM still delivers the security posture that your business needs? So we're going to make investments in defense in depth, and you'll see that in an upcoming slides. I'll call out a few that we're making. We also want to improve IAM hygiene. Typically, the IAM hygiene is addressed by products like CIEM or KIM, but KIM is a day 90 function. A lot can happen in 90 days when an account has more permissions than it ever needs. And when agents come into the play, this thing is only going to get even more difficult to handle. So we need to start getting a hold on identities now. So the way we build defense in depth, you have your core allow. Now you also have PAM grants. PAM is natively built into GCP. If you go to IAM, it's the second option right under the menu that loads up. It's free. You can basically put any permission in GCP, any IAM permission behind a PAM grant. A user can request it if they're eligible. Once they receive it, they can perform the operation. So instead of giving an allow, a PAM grant is a way to give the permission only when it's absolutely required. You also have deny. What deny takes care of is any permission, even if provided via a role, that you don't want a user to use, you can deny it at an organization level. So it doesn't matter who's been given the role. If they're not supposed to use that particular permission, they'll not be able to use the permission. And then principal access boundary, my favorite control. Now, maybe let's make this a little interactive. How many of you have requirements in your org that developers should not access production environments, they should only access dev or pre-prod? Show of hands. Everybody. This is a trick question. Everybody should have that requirement in your environment, right? Are you sure it happens the right way? I say, true. You don't know. Maybe the dev has access to prod. How many of you have requirements that service accounts for pre-prod and service accounts for prod should be two separate service accounts? Again, show of hands. OK, you all need to catch up. This is a trick question, too. That is a requirement. Service accounts in pre-prod should not be able to talk to prod. But are you sure that they aren't? Very likely they are. So how do you solve it? Somebody spins up a project, likely somebody from the office of the CISO. They spin up a project. They generate reports. They send it out to teams. Teams are overworked, overwhelmed, understaffed, underpaid. They don't have the time to go and do that cleanup. Principal access boundary delivers a very elegant solution to be able to do that. Within a matter of a few clicks, you can take any identity, human or non-human, and restrict its span. So you basically can say that this service account, I don't care what permissions this service account has. This service account can never go beyond this project, or beyond this folder, or beyond this organization if you're a multi-org kind of environment. So instead of having to go and do the bookkeeping and clean up, simply author principal access boundary policies, and they layer on top of existing IAM grants to ensure that segregation, when required, can actually happen. So let's talk about this in the context of a real scenario. Please say hello to Bob. Bob is my speaker image generated in likeness by Gemini. I don't know how I look like that, but maybe credits for being original at least. So that's Bob. And Bob wants to be able to create VMs. So the admin, so that's goodness, there's some segregation of duty. Bob's not able to give himself the VM admin himself, so he reaches out to the admin, and admin is nice, accepts the ticket, services the ticket, and Bob now has compute.admin role on the production folder. So you've given an allow. It's OK, but it's actually a bad practice. What you want to be able to do is, does Bob need to create a VM all the time? Or do they do it because they're part of the live side team, they're DevOps? They'll need it occasionally when they're responding to an issue or when they're creating a new environment. So instead of giving them an allow, give them a PAM grant, which they can request for on demand. They can even self-elevate if they have to, but only for the duration of time that they need that grant, and then the session gets tracked. So there's more governance built in. So instead of allow, switch to PAM. But there is still the problem of when you give Bob a VM.admin, guess what's included in VM-admin? There is included compute.instance.delete. Now, maybe Bob won't delete a VM, but maybe Bob is frustrated and might just accidentally delete a VM. Now you have a production environment that is potentially missing a VM and causing an outage. Now, mistakes can happen. The way to solve it is simply author an IAM deny organizational rule that except the administrator, nobody should be able to use the compute.instance.delete permission. So even though it's part of the compute.admin, it will get disallowed by IAM. But then you find out that Bob is only responsible for the marketing team. but you gave Bob access to the production folder. So instead of doing a massive update on Bob's permissions, you can simply draw a principal access boundary around Bob, and you can say Bob's access is restricted to the marketing project in the production folder. So what that does is IAM is iteratively able to honor the next policy that you authored, and you're building governance without having to do a massive lift of the core IAM capabilities that you've been using all this while. So I strongly recommend using allow, of course, but more importantly, deny, principal access boundary, and PAM for just-in-time access. So that's how we build defense in depth. Now, here's what we are also doing from an IAM hygiene point of view. As I was saying, IAM hygiene is typically left to the 90th day. We need to make it a day zero function. And the way we are making this a day zero function is very soon. We are launching in preview. It's already in private preview, so if you want to get access to it, my team's all here in the first row, and we can enable you. The Gemini-powered role picker. Now, what the Gemini-powered role picker does is, using natural language, identifies the set of roles that you need to perform a job, and just those roles. So instead of giving somebody a whole bunch of birthright permissions, you give them the permissions that really are required for the job that they're trying to perform. And then on day N, you use entitlement management, now available in general availability for both GCP and AWS, and also announcing a preview for Azure this week, so that you can do entitlement management for your identities across your multi-cloud environment. So on day zero, give the right permissions, but the person's role might change. They may no longer perform that task. So keep periodically also fine-tuning those permissions so that you don't have those 200 million identities with 51,000 permissions being used only 2% of the time. You really want to get that down to a pretty low number. So let's look at the Gemini-powered role picker in action. In this case, what I'm doing is I'm trying to give myself some permissions. So I pick myself as the principal. Now, I could go through the pretty rich catalog of 1,500 built-in permissions and select the one that will get the job done, or I can get Gemini to help. So in this case, I'm going to say, what role do I need to be able to access AlloyDB? Like, I want to be able to connect to my AlloyDB instance. So I'm going to say, suggest the role for me. It takes a few seconds. And what you'll see is that Gemini will come back with the role that I need to be able to perform the job. So in this case, it came back with Cloud AlloyDB database user. Notice it suggested user because I don't need admin to be able to connect to the AlloyDB. So it was able to identify the lower privilege role that gets the job done. But that was a simple prompt. Let's try something complex. So in this case, what I'm going to tell Gemini to do is I want to create a Vertex AI pipeline that reads raw data from cloud storage, performs feature engineering using Dataproc serverless, trains a model on Vertex AI, stores the trained model in Vertex AI model registry. What roles do I need? As you can imagine, that's a pretty complex prompt that I'm providing to Gemini. And again, Gemini is going through the over 1,500 built-in roles that are available in Google Cloud's IAM catalog, and it's going to identify the 3 that I need in the least privileged manner to be able to perform that job related to building that model and saving that model in model registry. So those are the roles. And if I like them, I can simply say, OK, add them to the policy. And with one click, they will get added. And I'll be able to save the policy. And from that point on, I update the binding related to me, and I'll have those permissions. So on day 0, instead of giving me permissions because everybody else in my team has the same permission, give me permissions based on the task. Now, you can imagine, as we get more and more app-centric with the App Development Center also announced today, we can now start basically helping you look at the application that you're trying to deploy and recommend roles right there. So looking at the IAC associated with your app deployment, we can tell you these are exactly the permissions that you need, and maybe you don't have them, so maybe if you give them later, it's going to be frustrating. Let's give them on day 0, but only let's give the permissions that are actually required. So that's the Gemini-powered role picker. Like I said, it's in private preview, and we can get you access if you'd like. Also, with IAM, some additional updates. IAM Deny is now supported by 73 services. This is going to expand to 100 in the next couple of months. Tools that help you reason about deny policies like Simulator and Troubleshooter are also now available. Principal access boundary, my favorite control, is now supported by 30 services. Now, this is going to expand massively this year as well. Also, tooling available. And with PAM, we are announcing new features today, features like MPA, or multi-party approval. Before, with PAM, you could have one approver. Now you can have multiple approvers in sequence. So if it needs to go through a tier 1, tier 2 approval, you can program that in PAM. You can also create grant customization so that if a grant is much broader, when creating the entitlement or approving the grant, I can scope it down to say, I'll give you this permission, but I'll only give you for a targeted project or a targeted folder. So customizations with grants is also now available with PAM. All right, so let's quickly talk about one final thing with IAM. So there's a lot of interesting features in IAM, and as I keep saying, defense in depth is important. If you haven't tried out all of these capabilities, you're missing out, and you need to be paying attention to them. At the same time, as the PM on point for this area, I'll also acknowledge that we don't make it easy for you to discover all of these capabilities. You're dependent on documentation, you're dependent on being in this room, hearing about it here, or somebody, one of your CEs telling you, oh, did you know about PAB? And that's hard. So what we're doing is we are building a brand new experience for IAM. It's called the IAM Admin Center, and this will go out in preview in the coming weeks. Now, IAM Admin Center is tailor-made for the role that you perform. So in this case, I'm the org admin, so I'm seeing a view that is bespoke to the org admin. If I were a project owner, I would see a view that was project owner specific. I see security insights and recommendations when I get to the IAM Admin Center. I can also pick up where I left off. So if I previously was performing any simulations, I can continue them, or I can take actions on pending notifications for me. Insights include when I have principals with excessive permissions, or I have roles that need fine-tuning, or I have service accounts that have lateral movement capabilities that need to be paid attention to, or if I want to enable organizational policies that can improve my access posture. I can also pick up any kind of policies that I've been simulating or in a dry run mode, so I can click on them, and what you'll see is it will directly zoom into the targeted feature, allowing you to complete your journey without having to context switch across different surfaces in IAM and policy. What you can also do directly from the IAM Admin Center is if you have any PAM entitlement approvals pending your attention, it will bring them into your focus. So I can click on entitlement pending my approval, and sure enough, I have a few grants to approve for my team. I can directly take the action and come back to the IAM Admin Center. What you'll also see in terms of additional widgets on the IAM Admin Center are things that help the overall hygiene of the organization. So MFA is obviously super important. This is telling me that over 50% of the sessions are still not using MFA when they are logging into the cloud. It's also telling me I have risky access findings, or how I can mitigate phishing and data exfiltration risks, or the fact that I'm using service accounts with active keys, which I really should not be doing. I should be using workload identity federation, or any other capability that will improve my posture. So this is the IAM Admin Center. It's designed to be specific to the role or the persona that you have with the cloud, but it's also designed to make it easy for you to find, try, learn, and use IAM capabilities that you're interested in, bringing the IAM experience into one modern look and feel. So this is going to go out in the coming weeks, directly available in Pantheon. When you go to IAM, you'll just see a new landing page, and this is what it's going to be. All right, let's talk about one final topic, and then we'll take questions. Access risk. Now, it's very important that in addition to IAM, once an identity has logged in, you still need to be making sure that that identity's activity or the user activity is still something that you can support. Now, when it comes to access risk, we have a whole bunch of products that you can leverage, and we have sessions this week that go into a lot more detail about each of these capabilities. There's VPC service controls, there's identity-aware proxy, there's context-aware access, there's also org restrictions headers. But the three that I want to talk about today, before we open up for questions, are MFA, reauthentication, and ITDR with CAA. Starting with MFA. I don't have bullets. I don't have a Bob here. I'm simply going to say MFA is non-negotiable. Nobody in this room should have to convince each other to use MFA. MFA is rolling out fleet-wide this year. I strongly recommend you check out go/googlecloud-MFA. That tells you our rollout schedule on when it will start becoming mandatory for your admins and end users. It is very, very important that everybody turn on MFA. Let's talk about automatic reauthentication. Now, this capability is designed when you perform targeted sensitive actions. Maybe somebody is updating the billing account. That's a sensitive action in the context of Google Cloud. What this capability does is that even when a session has been validated at login, When that user tries to perform a sensitive action, one of the 11s that we will initially go out with in preview, it will make the user re-authenticate. But at the same time, we don't want them to feel the friction. So if they are performing repeated sensitive actions which are still allowed, we'll also back off 15 minutes between re-authentication attempts. Now, this is going to be enabled by default, and we recommend that you keep it on. But if you have to disable it, you can opt out of it. But we recommend that sensitive action reinforcement via reauth stays on in your environment. Over time, you can expect us to truly make it an open framework where you can say that in my environment, if somebody performs a targeted function, they always should re-authenticate. You'll be able to author custom re-authentication policies in addition to using the 11 that we are shipping out in preview. So that's reauth for sensitive actions now going out in preview. And then finally, with context-aware access, you can already track the user and device's attribute when you give them access to APIs or console. We are evolving CAA to become more aware about the actual activity of that session. So if the session is performing too many repeated actions that look atypical, or just the overall pattern of the sequence of things performed by this account is something that does not match their previous activity, we'll track over 60 signals, group them into 5 categories associated with user risk, and you'll be able to author policies which say, when such a pattern is detected, what should you do? Should you insist on MFA, MPA? Should you insist on a re-authentication? Or can IAM intervene and deny or eject the user at runtime? So imagine everything that you typically delegate to the SOC and the SecOps, go investigate the account's activity over a period of time to figure out if a breach happened. We are programming that directly into the IAM's control plane, still giving you the control to decide what action is the allowed action, but ITDR in IAA detects the identity threat while it is in progress, hopefully reducing the dwell time of the attack before it becomes an actual issue. So this is going to be available directly in context-aware access. It's going to be available as a new set of risk types called user activity-associated risk types, and you'll be able to select which ones you want to factor in before a decision is made by IAM to disallow or re-authenticate the session. So that's ITDR with context-aware access directly built into IAM. All right, I'm at the end of my content. I'm just going to talk about a few announcements as a recap. As I said, app management with resource managers now in preview. Custom org policy now supports over 60 services. Identity federation is GA for over 95% products. Keyless access to Google Cloud APIs using X509 certificates is now GA. Managed workload identity, very amazing capability, available for GCE, GKE, very soon for Cloud Run. IAM, Deny, and PAB are expanding their service coverage, but also their tooling coverage. On PAM, new features include multi-level approval, grant customization. KIM for Azure is going preview in addition to the GA for AWS and GCP. IAM Admin Center, that's going to simplify a lot of your IAM experiences. That's coming soon. Re-authentication for the 11 sensitive actions, and our doc will include the exact 11 sensitive actions. And we also have sessions this week which go deeper into exactly why those actions were selected as sensitive. We also have CAA and VPC new dashboards in preview, but more importantly, ITDR with CAA now becoming available. And then strongly recommend MFA and Google Cloud Security Baseline to be part of your environment, because that's how you achieve strong posture, both related to the resource configuration and the identity and the account behavior. Some sessions that I strongly recommend this week, these are sessions that my team, my amazing engineering and PM team right in the front few rows, that they're going to lead. We're going to have demos and more deeper content available in these sessions. I also recommend visiting us at the expo floor, and we can show you some of these things in more detail. If you want to get enrolled to any of the private previews, we can do that as well. With that, I'm going to thank you for your time. We can take questions for the next 5 minutes. If you have a question, please walk up to a microphone, and please do take the session feedback. Thank you.
Sir, do you have a question, sir?
There are no microphones.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yes.
For the org constraints and custom org constraints, is there a plan to allow us to do our own baseline to make sure that we're not going to break our current organization? Because the dry run logs really, I think, are insufficient to know how our current resources are actually in line or not.
How your current resources are?
Well, so if I have a new constraint, so for your example, I don't know if my current VMs are on N2Ds or not, and there's no way through the org constraints to really confirm that unless I just look at dry run logs for a period of time. I just don't think that's a very complete solution before I do a new org constraint.
I mean, the approach to do it is to actually do a simulator or dry run, but if you're saying that the reports are not enough or sufficient for you to be able to make that determination,
Sure.
I think we should talk a little bit more. We have Prashant and Akshay in the first row, and they can actually track that feedback. The intent of those reports is to exactly tell you if the constraint's going to be, if the constraint's going to take in your environment or not. But if that's not happening with the logs, then we should take a look at it.
Okay, maybe it's misunderstanding, but I'll talk to those guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I have questions actually. So it was a good sessions here actually, PAM and PAP based. So my question is like, since you are rolling out the PAM and PAP based, authentications, do you have time based, limitations on that? So if
Yeah.
I say, oh, you have.
Yeah, so currently PAM allows you to configure a grant with a maximum time window of 8 hours. We've had conversations of making it 24 hours. But I've also heard from customers that sometimes a deployment that needs an elevated grant can run into a week. So allow us up to 7 days. So currently, there is a fixed number of hours. We might expand it to 7 hours. At the end of that window, whatever the window be, the access gets revoked automatically. And by the way, the original grant recipe has a time window, but when you request it, you can request it for a subset of time as well. So you have 2 layers of time scheduling in there.
Listen to that one. So if I have some sort of like, the monitoring systems where the, audit has been logged, if I have a tracking ticket and say, okay, the ticket validity is like 2 hours or 3 hours, based on that, the authentication be granted and revoked based on those.
That can happen because we already integrate with PubSub, so you can automate that entire pipeline.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
First of all, thank you for the session. It was really useful. I have a question about the role picker. You mentioned that you can find out the appropriate role to assign. Does it support the custom roles?
Should it support custom roles? Let me ask you that question.
We are strongly relying on custom roles because we don't want to use built-in roles all the time because we don't have control.
Yeah.
Right? Google might decide to update existing built-in role, and we would not have complete control on the roles. So that's why we have quite a few custom roles. And I have a second fold as well.
Yeah.
Do you have a feature in mind where we can ask Gemini to create a custom role based on the permissions we want to allow?
Yeah. So the answer to the question is yes for both. We're going to initially do the preview, and like I said, we're already in private, and I would encourage you to get on board to the private. Currently for built-in roles, but very soon we're going to expand it to custom roles as well. And we'll also help you with the authoring of custom roles. What we'll also help you with is when a KIM recommendation says that this role is over-permissive, we'll inline let you author a custom role that's a subset of the permissions that were actually used. So we'll stitch these journeys end to end. But the features are in work, but currently the role picker is for built-in roles.
Thank you.
Great questions. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
So I wanted to know, is there a plan to extend the conditions in IAM deny to support functions other than resource tags, like resource names that we certainly allow in IAM allow? And also, can we go at the resource metadata level? Like, is that a plan in future? Because I think org policy, you can go at the metadata level, but IAM deny or IAM allow doesn't allow that.
When you say metadata level, what do you mean? Give me an example.
Yeah, like for example, let's say a disk, the size of disk or the type of disk, like that kind of metadata level.
So maybe not that exact capability, because we like to think of like what is a identity-centric action versus what a configuration for a data resource, so like from a data plane point of view. But there are plans to add more conditions to IAM deny. What I would love to do is actually sit down and have a targeted requirements conversation with you, because your scenario might be very specific. We also have capabilities, again, Akshay is working on them, resource usage constraints or RUC, and they might be a better fit for what you're trying to achieve. So let's connect you to Akshay and actually go in detail with that actual scenario.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question about, because we use PIM integration with Azure
Yeah.
and Google.
Yeah.
But one of the issues that I see is it's kind of, to get it to integrate, you have to kind of have a empty group assigned a standing permission. Is there a way to integrate that with the PAM here? And that way it's not a standing permission?
Yeah, so I'll be very candid. Like our plan is to, like the reason we built PAM natively for GCP is because we believe that when you use a third-party system, errors happen. And we don't necessarily want you to have to, like IAM understands the core permissions in IAM, so the functions related to IAM's JIT behavior or PAM behavior should be natively handled by IAM itself. So we currently do not have plans to integrate with any third-party PAM capabilities. We would rather build them natively into PAM. If anything, we've also resisted the idea of building PAM for other clouds because we believe that that scenario is best handled by those targeted clouds. Otherwise, you end up with like, lifting and shifting a traditional PAM product for a cloud environment, and it doesn't really serve the purpose.
Okay, and then just one additional question. Is there going to be, is PAM going to remain free, or do you know if it's a free product or?
Start using it, then maybe I'll start charging for it. No, I mean, core set of capabilities, what you see, they're generally available, they will be free. There are going to be advanced PAM features related to session management. Those will be included in a targeted pay-as-you-go SKU.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Yes.
Hi, this should
Hello.
be quick. Service accounts, you talked about it a little bit. Is there any plans to foreseeably have labels allowed on service accounts? I know you can put a description field and tags, but or even a reason why labels may not be appropriate.
Because labels are free form. Labels are not opinionated. Labels are not governed. A lot of bad behavior can happen.
Yep.
So labels afford the flexibility, but they don't have a strong governance model. Tags are much more well-disciplined. So we believe things like service account, because it depends on what you're going to use that tag for, right? Like if it is something like who to contact to update this service account, that's a different thing. But if you're going to change the behavior of what that service account is going to be able to do via a policy, we would rather do it with tags, not with labels. And if anything, we're going to invest in tags forward-looking, not in labels.
Okay, yeah, fair. One other question around PAM. Is there future roadmap to support tags with PAM? So right now you can do like regular expressions with condition IAMs for resource level PAM.
Yeah.
But is there any plans for tag support?
Not on the roadmap for this year, but I can take that request and we can make sure we add it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, hi.
Yes.
This is regarding managed org policy.
Sorry, say that again.
This is regarding the managed org policies.
Yes.
So currently, most of your managed org policy does not support dry run mode.
Uh-huh.
Is there any plan for that?
Yes. So if you come to our targeted session on org policy and custom org policy, we'll give you that session number off stage. We're going to talk about why we are moving to managed constraints. Managed constraint, the platform that org policy is evolving to, natively has tooling built in. So we've already migrated 6 org policies to managed constraint. We're going to pretty much migrate, I believe this year we're going to get to like over 50 by the end of this year. And what you can do is you can work with us and let us know which org policies are really, really important to you so that we can make sure that they are up ahead in our backlog from a migration point of view. But it's when you migrate to managed constraint, they come with the tooling support. It's a more forward-looking platform capability.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to be walked off the stage, but I can stick around for any more questions. Thank you.